Hi, boys and girls. It's time for Indian in the Cupboard, Chapter 2 today. Chapter 1 was a lot of fun. We learned that Omri got a great gift for his birthday, and he had an unusual birthday wish when he blew out his candles. He wanted to have some magic happen instead of passing his spelling test, which is his usual wish. So now I'll read Chapter 2. It's called The Door is Shut. Omri got dressed in a state of such high excitement that he could scarcely control his fumbling fingers enough to do up his buttons and tie his shoelaces. He thought he was excited yesterday on his birthday, but that was nothing compared to how he felt right now. He was dying to open the cupboard door and have another look. But the landing outside of his bedroom door was like a railway station at this hour of the morning. Parents and brothers passed by continuously. One of them would burst in at any moment. He'd nip upstairs after breakfast, he decided, and have a quick look when he was supposed to be cleaning his teeth after eating. But that didn't work out. There was a stupid row at the breakfast table. See if you can figure out what row means from the context of the story. Adel took the last of the Rice Krispies, and although there were plenty of cornflakes, not to mention sugar puffs, Adel made such awful fuss that his mother lost their temper, and at the end of it, nobody got to brush their teeth after all. I bet you know what row means now. They were all bundled out of the house at the last minute. Omri even forgot to take his swimming things, even though it was Thursday, the day his class went to the school pool. A school pool, wow. He was an excellent swimmer, and he was so annoyed when he remembered that he had forgotten. Halfway to school, but it was too late to go back. So he turned to Adel and shouted, "You made me forget my swimming stuff," and bashed him over the head. That naturally led to them all being late for school and furthermore arriving in rather grubby condition. All this actually pushed the Indian right out of Omri's mind, but the minute he set his eyes on Patrick, he remembered. Oh, he remembered. And not for one single second for the rest of the day did the Indian leave Omri's mind. You may imagine the temptation to tell Patrick what had happened. Several times even, Omri very nearly did tell him, and he couldn't help dropping a number of tantalizing hints. "That present you got me, it was the best one." "Really?" Patrick said. "I thought you got a skateboard." "Yeah, I did, but I like yours better." "Better than a skateboard? Are you kidding me?" "Yours turns out to be more exciting than that skateboard." "You're just being sarcastic," Patrick said. "No, I'm not," said Omri. Later, after they had the spelling test and Omri had been marked 3 out of 10. Ooh, that's a bad score. 3 out of 10, not so good. Should have studied. Patrick joked, "I bet the plastic Indian could have done better." Unwarily, Omri replied, "Oh, I don't think he can write English. He can only just speak." He stopped himself quickly, but Patrick was giving him an odd look. "What did you say?" "Oh, nothing. I didn't say anything." Omri wrestled with himself. He wanted to keep his secret, and in any case, Patrick probably wouldn't believe him. But the need to talk about it was very strong. "He can speak," he said slowly at last. "Beard?" said Patrick, which was school slang for, "I don't believe you." Instead of insisting, Omri said nothing more, and that led Patrick to ask, "Why did you say that, about him speaking?" "Because he does." "Itchy beard," said Patrick, which of course means, "I don't believe you even more." Omri refused to get involved in an argument. He was somehow scared that if he talked about the Indian, something bad would happen. In fact, as the day went on, he longed more and more to get home. He began to feel certain that the whole incredible happening, well, not that it hadn't happened, but the whole incredible happening just meant something would go wrong soon. All his thoughts, all his dreams were centered on the miraculous, endless possibilities opened up by a real, live, miniature Indian of his very, very own. It would be too terrible if the whole thing turned out to be some sort of mistake. After school, Patrick wanted him to stay on the school grounds and skateboard with him. For weeks and weeks, Omri had longed to do that, and he didn't have his own skateboard, so he couldn't do it till now. So it was quite beyond Patrick's understanding when Omri said, "I can't, I have to get home. Anyway, I didn't bring it to school with me." "Why not? Are you crazy? You finally get a skateboard for your birthday and you left it at home? What's got into you?" "I want to go home and play with my Indian." Patrick's eyes narrowed in disbelief. "Why? Can I come with you?" Owen hesitated, But no, it wouldn't do. He must get to know the Indian himself before the thought of introducing him to anyone else could happen, even if it was just Patrick. Besides, the most awful thought had come to Omri during the last lesson, which had made it almost impossible for him to sit still. If the Indian were real, and not just, well, moving plastic as Pinocchio had been moving wood, he would need things. He would need food and other things. Omri had left him shut up in the dark all day with nothing at all in that cupboard. The door fitted very tight, and how would air get in there for such a small creature? What if the Indian had died? What if Omri had killed him by leaving him alone all day in the cupboard? At the very best, the Indian must have passed a horrible day in the dark prison of a cupboard. Omri was appalled at the thought of it. Why had he allowed himself to be drawn into that silly row at breakfast instead of slipping away and making sure his Indian was all right? The mere thought that he might be dead was very frightening. Oh, it was frightening. Omri felt sick inside. He ran all the way home, burst through the back door, raced up the stairs without even saying hello to his mother. He shut the bedroom door tight and fell on his knees beside the bedside table. With a hand that shook, he turned the key in the lock and he opened the cupboard door. So here's my key, boys and girls. Here's my little cupboard. Let's open it up and see what we find. Oh, there's the Indian. The Indian lay there on the floor of the cupboard, stiff, too stiff. That was not a dead body. Omri picked it up. The Indian was made of plastic again. Omri knelt there, appalled. He had killed his Indian, or done something awful to him at least. At the same time, he had killed his dream. All the wonderful excitement, secret games that had filled his imagination all day. But that was not the main horror. His Indian had been real, not a mere toy, but a person. And now there he lay in Omri's hand, cold, stiff, lifeless. Somehow, Omri thought it was his own fault. How had it happened? It never occurred to Omri now that he had imagined the whole incredible episode this morning. This Indian was in a completely different position from the one he had been when Patrick had given him to Omri. So he knew that it wasn't just his dream. He was looking different. His body was in a different position. Then, before, he had been standing on one leg as if he was in a war dance of a sort. One moccasin raised, both elbows bent, one fist with a knife in it up in the air. But now he lay flat, legs apart, arm at his side, eyes closed. His knife was no longer even a part of him. It lay separately on a floor on part of the cupboard. Omri picked up the little knife. The easiest way to do this, he found, was to wet his finger and press it on the tiny knife, which stuck it to it. It, too, was plastic and could no more have pierced his skin than a twist of paper could have. But yet, that morning, it had pierced him. In fact, he still had the mark on his finger. This morning, it had been a real knife. Omri stroked the Indian with his finger. There was a painful thickness in the back of his throat. The pain of sadness, disappointment, guilt. Oh, it felt like he had swallowed a hot potato, and it wouldn't cool down. He let the tears come, and he cried, and he cried. For about 10 minutes, he just sat there and cried. Then he put the Indian back in the cupboard and locked the door because he couldn't bear to look at him anymore. Looking for my spot. That night at supper, he couldn't eat anything, and he couldn't talk. His father touched Omri's face and said it felt quite hot. His mother took him upstairs and put him to bed, and oddly enough, he didn't object. He didn't know if he was ill or not, or if he just felt so bad that he was quite glad to be made a fuss of. Not that that improved his situation, but it was some comfort. What is it, Omri? Would you tell me what's wrong? His mother asked. Nothing really, he answered. She sighed and kissed him, or rather the back of him, and left the room, closing the door softly. As soon as she had gone, he heard something, a scratching, a muttering, a definitely alive sound coming from the cupboard. Omri snapped on his bedroom light and stared wide-eyed at his own face in the mirror of the cupboard door. He stared at the key with its twisted ribbon and listened to the sounds, now unmistakable. The trembling he felt in his hand as he turned his key was palpable, and there was the Indian on the shelf again, almost exactly eye level with Omri. He was alive again. What happened to you? Omri asked. Happen? The Indian answered. Good sleep happened. Cold ground. Need blanket. Food. Fire. Omri gaped. What was this little man doing, giving him orders? Undoubtedly he was. He even waved his knife now back and forth in his hand in that unmistakable way. Omri was so happy he could hardly speak. All right, you stay there, he said to the Indian. I'll get food, don't worry. And he gasped as he scrambled out of bed. He hurried downstairs, excited but thoughtful. What could it all mean? Then, the moment the cupboard door closed, the Indian went to sleep? Is that what had happened? It was so puzzling, but he didn't bother worrying about it too much. His main concern was getting downstairs without his parents hearing him and getting to the kitchen to find some food that would suit the Indian and bring it back without anybody asking any questions. Fortunately, his parents were in the living room watching television, so he was able to tiptoe to the kitchen along the dark passage. Once there, he turned on a light, and there was the refrigerator to light his path. He surveyed inside of the refrigerator. What do Indians eat? Meat, deer meat, rabbits? Any sort of animal, I guess, that they could shoot on their land. Needless to say, they didn't have any rabbits or deer in his fridge. But they had biscuits, jam, peanut butter. The sort of thing was not a problem. But Omri didn't feel that they were Indian foods. So he found a paper plate in the drawer with picnic stuff, and he took a good teaspoonful of corn. Then he broke off a corner of crusty bread, and then cheese. What about a drink? Milk. Yeah, milk would do. Surely Indian braves probably didn't drink milk. They usually drink something called firewater in films, which seemed to be a hot drink. But Omri dared not heat anything up for him. Ordinary non-firewater would have to do. Unless, what about some Coke? Maybe he would like Coke. That was the American drink. Luckily for him, there was a big bottle left over from his birthday, so he took that upstairs. He did wish there was some cold meat, but there just wasn't any in the fridge. Clutching the Coke bottle by the neck in one hand and the paper plate in the other, Omri sneaked all the way upstairs with a fast-beating heart. All was just as he had left it, except that the Indian was sitting on the edge of the shelf, dangling his legs and trying to sharpen his knife on the metal. He jumped up as soon as Omri came in the room. Food? He asked eagerly. Yes, but I don't know if it's what you like. I like. Give quick, he said. But Omri wanted to arrange things a little. He took